I sat on another man's lap, drunk, and mocked my husband in bed. Now he's divorcing me without a word. That's what everyone's calling it. Like I'm some kind of monster who planned this whole thing. Like I woke up that morning thinking, today I'm gonna destroy my marriage for fun. But nobody wants to hear about what I was actually going through. What pushed me to that breaking point, where I just needed to feel something other than the crushing weight of watching my dad waste away. Jordan and I had been together since college, married for 2 years now. He's always been this steady, reliable guy. The kind who remembers to take out the trash without being asked and actually listens when I talk about my day. Most of the time, I loved that about him. But when my dad got diagnosed with stage 4 pancreatic cancer 6 months ago, Jordan's gentle supportiveness started feeling suffocating instead of comforting. He'd ask how I was doing with this careful, therapeutic voice that made me want to scream. He'd suggest I talk to someone, maybe take some time off work, like there was some magic solution that would make watching your father die easier to handle. The worst part was how patient he was being. When I snapped at him for loading the dishwasher wrong, he'd just nod and reload it quietly. When I couldn't sleep and kept him awake tossing and turning, he'd rub my back without complaining. When I stopped cooking dinner or doing laundry or basically functioning like a normal wife, he picked up the slack without a word. It should have made me grateful, but instead, it made me feel like he was treating me like a broken thing that needed to be handled carefully. My dad had always been larger than life. This booming laugh, telling inappropriate jokes at family dinners, the guy who taught me to change a tire and throw a punch. Now he was this skeletal thing hooked up to machines, sleeping 20 hours a day when he wasn't throwing up from chemo. The doctors kept using words like comfortable and quality time, which was their polite way of saying he was going to die and there wasn't shit they could do about it. Jordan tried to understand. He'd drive me to the hospital visits, sit quietly in those awful plastic chairs while I held my dad's hand. He'd bring me coffee and tissues, and never once complained about how this was affecting our life together. But I could see it in his face sometimes. This looked like he was watching me disappear and didn't know how to bring me back. That look made me angry in a way I couldn't explain. Like he was already mourning the loss of the wife he used to have, instead of just letting me fall apart in peace. 3 weeks before everything exploded, I'd started having these dreams where my dad was healthy again, taking me fishing like when I was 8 years old. I'd wake up for those few seconds thinking it was real, and then reality would crash back down. Jordan would be there asking if I was okay, wanting to talk about it, and I'd have to resist the urge to punch him in his concerned, loving face. That's when I started drinking more. Not during the day or anything crazy, just a glass of wine with dinner that turned into 2, then 3. Jordan noticed but didn't say anything at first, which somehow made it worse. I wanted him to fight me on something, anything, instead of just accepting that his wife was slowly drowning and there was nothing he could do about it. The night it all went to hell started innocently enough. I'd had a particularly brutal day at the hospital. Dad had been awake but confused, asking for his mother who'd been dead for 15 years. I came home feeling like I'd been scraped raw from the inside out, and Jordan was there making dinner, being perfect and understanding as always. "Rough day?" he asked, and something about the gentleness in his voice made me want to break something. "I need to unwind," I said. "Like really unwind. Can we have people over? I just want to feel normal for one night." He hesitated for just a second, probably because last time we'd had friends over I'd gotten too drunk and cried about Dad for an hour, but then nodded. "Whatever you need, babe. Who do you want to invite?" I texted our usual group, Amanda and her boyfriend Owen, Lisa, and Trent. Trent was this guy from Jordan's work who'd started hanging around our friend group about 6 months ago. He was everything Jordan wasn't. Loud, funny in an obnoxious way, the kind of guy who'd do shots on a Tuesday and think it was hilarious. Normally his energy annoyed me, but lately I found myself looking forward to his stupid jokes and inappropriate comments. He made me feel like the old version of myself, the one who existed before cancer and hospitals and watching my father disappear by degrees. Everyone showed up around 7 with beer and wine and this determined party energy, like they'd all agreed beforehand to help Tina have a good time. It should have been sweet, but instead it felt performative, like I was some charity case they were all trying to cheer up. Jordan kept hovering, watching my wine intake with these little worried glances he thought I couldn't see. For the first hour, everything was fine. We ordered pizza, played some stupid card game, and I actually managed to laugh at a few of Trent's ridiculous stories about his dating disasters. But Jordan kept refilling my water glass and suggesting I eat something, these tiny acts of caretaking that felt like judgment. Every time he did it, I took another sip of wine out of spite. By 9 o'clock, I was definitely drunk, but the good kind where everything felt possible, and my dad's skeletal face wasn't burned into the back of my eyelids. Trent was telling this story about accidentally going on a date with his boss's daughter, doing voices for all the characters, and I was laughing so hard my stomach hurt. When was the last time Jordan had made me laugh like that? When was the last time he'd made me feel anything other than carefully managed grief? That's when Jordan tried to intervene. He came over with another glass of water and leaned down to whisper, "Maybe slow down a little, babe, you've had quite a bit." The way he said it, so careful, so fucking reasonable, made something snap inside me. Here I was, finally feeling human again for the first time in weeks, and he wanted to manage that too. Control my grief, control my drinking, control how I was allowed to cope with watching my father die. "I'm fine," I said, louder than necessary. "I'm having fun. Remember fun, Jordan? That thing we used to have before you became my grief counselor?" He looked hurt, which made me feel guilty, which made me angrier. Everyone else got quiet, that awkward silence that happens when couples fight in front of friends. Jordan just nodded and backed off, probably thinking he was being supportive by giving me space. But I didn't want space. I wanted him to fight back, to show some passion, to care enough to actually argue with me, instead of just managing me like a difficult patient. So I kept drinking, and the angrier I got at Jordan's saint-like patience, the more I found myself gravitating toward Trent's chaotic energy. He wasn't trying to take care of me or fix me or handle me with kid gloves. He was just treating me like a normal person who could make her own decisions about how much wine to drink. The breaking point came around 10:30. I was telling everyone about my dad's diagnosis, but instead of the careful, sanitized version I usually shared, I was getting into the real details. How he'd shit himself in front of me last week. How the morphine made him hallucinate that there were children in his room. How I sometimes wished he'd just die already so I could stop watching him suffer. Jordan kept trying to catch my eye, probably wanting to redirect the conversation to something less heavy. But for once I didn't want to protect everyone else from my reality. I wanted them to understand how fucking awful this was, how it felt to watch the strongest man you'd ever known reduced to a confused, pain-racked shell. "Tina," Jordan said gently, Maybe we should what?" I interrupted. "Talk about something else? Pretend everything's fine?" "God, Jordan, sometimes I just want you to let me feel things without trying to fix them." I got up to get another drink, stumbling slightly, and that's when I saw the look that passed between Jordan and Amanda. This knowing, concerned glance, like they were the parents, and I was the out-of-control teenager. Like they needed to handle me. That look sent me over the edge. I was so tired of being handled, so tired of being treated like I was broken. When I walked back toward the group with my refilled wine glass, Jordan opened his arms like he wanted to give me a hug, probably some gesture to de-escalate the tension I was creating. But I didn't want his careful, therapeutic hugs. I walked right past him and plopped down on Trent's lap instead. He seemed surprised but didn't push me away, probably too shocked to react quickly. And suddenly I was exactly where I wanted to be, with someone who wasn't trying to manage my emotions or monitor my alcohol intake or treat me like a grief-stricken invalid. "You know what's really fucked up?" I said, settling more comfortably against Trent's chest. I could feel Jordan's eyes on me, but I didn't look at him. "My dad is dying, and all I want is for my husband to fuck me hard enough to make me forget about it for 5 minutes." But Jordan's idea of passionate sex, is asking if I'm comfortable 3 times and making sure we're both emotionally present for the experience. The room went dead silent. I could feel Trent tense up beneath me, probably realizing this was heading somewhere he didn't want to be involved in. But I was past caring about anyone else's comfort. For months I'd been swallowing my frustration and grief and anger, being the good wife who appreciated her husband's support. Now it was all pouring out, and I couldn't stop it. I mean, I'm dealing with death and mortality and the complete meaninglessness of existence, I continued, my voice getting louder. And Jordan thinks what I need is gentle lovemaking and constant check-ins about my feelings. Sometimes I just want to be fucked like I matter, you know? Like I'm still a woman instead of just a sad case he has to handle carefully. I could see Jordan out of the corner of my eye. He'd gone completely still, his face pale. Good. Maybe now he'd show some actual emotion instead of just therapeutic concern. Tina, Lisa said carefully, maybe. Maybe what? Maybe I should shut up and be grateful that my husband treats me like a porcelain doll? Maybe I should pretend that having the most boring sex life in America is fine because at least he's being supportive about my dad dying? I was spiraling, and I knew it, but it felt good to finally say these things out loud. For months I'd been choking on my own frustration, trying to be the grateful wife who appreciated Jordan's steadiness. But his steadiness was suffocating me. His patience was making me crazy. His gentle understanding was everything I didn't need. You want to know the really sick part? I said, looking directly at Jordan for the first time since I'd sat down on Trent's lap. Sometimes I think my dying father would give me a better time in bed than my own husband. At least Dad had passion. At least when he was alive, really alive, he knew how to make a woman feel desired instead of managed. The words hung in the air like a toxic cloud. I knew immediately that I'd crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed, said something so awful that there was no taking it back. Jordan's face went through this progression of emotions: shock, hurt, disgust, and finally something that looked like recognition. Like he was seeing me clearly for the first time. He stood up slowly, looked at me sitting there on another man's lap, and just walked out. No yelling, no dramatic confrontation, no fighting back. Just this quiet, devastating exit that somehow hurt worse than if he'd screamed at me. Everyone else started making awkward excuses to leave. Trent practically dumped me off his lap in his hurry to get away from the situation. Within 10 minutes, I was alone in our living room, drunk and suddenly understanding that I'd just blown up my marriage for no reason other than I was angry at Jordan for not being someone else. I tried texting him, called him about 15 times, left rambling voicemails that started with apologies and somehow turned into justifications for why I'd said what I said. When he didn't respond, I got angry again. How dare he just walk away instead of fighting for us? How dare he abandon me when I needed him most, even if I'd been awful? By morning, the anger had curdled into panic. Jordan came back to pack his things and I begged him to stay. Promised I'd get help, stop drinking, do whatever he needed. But he just looked at me with these tired, sad eyes and said he wanted a divorce. I can't compete with a fantasy, he said quietly, and I can't keep trying to love someone who clearly has no respect for me. That was 3 months ago. Jordan moved in with his brother and filed for divorce 2 weeks later. He won't talk to me except through lawyers. Our mutual friends have mostly sided with him, which I guess makes sense since I publicly humiliated him in front of them. My dad died 6 weeks after Jordan left, and I had to go through the funeral and burial alone because my husband, my almost ex-husband, was done being my emotional support system. Everyone thinks I'm the villain in this story. Jordan's family, our friends, even my own mother keeps asking what I was thinking, how I could have said those things. But none of them understand what it was like, being married to someone so relentlessly understanding that you felt like you were disappearing. Jordan never fought with me, never showed jealousy or passion or any emotion stronger than gentle concern. How was I supposed to feel desired by someone who treated me like a patient instead of a woman? Yes, I said awful things. Yes, I shouldn't have sat on Trent's lap or aired our bedroom problems in public. But I was drunk and grieving and desperate for my husband to show me he cared enough to get angry. Instead, he just walked away, like I wasn't even worth fighting for. The divorce was finalized last month. Jordan got the house because he could afford the mortgage alone, and I couldn't. I'm living in a shitty one-bedroom apartment now, working extra shifts to cover the rent. Jordan's apparently doing great. I heard from Amanda that he's been going to therapy and working out and generally thriving without me dragging him down with my grief and neediness. Last week I saw him at the grocery store with some woman I didn't recognize. She was pretty in this understated way, laughing at something he'd said. They looked comfortable together. Natural. He looked happy in a way I don't think he ever looked with me, especially toward the end. Part of me wanted to march over there and remind him that I'm the one who knew him first, who loved him when he was just an awkward college kid with no confidence. But mostly, I just felt empty, watching him be the version of himself that existed without me. The version that didn't have to manage someone else's grief or walk on eggshells around his wife's drinking, or pretend that being compared to a dying father was something a marriage could survive. I know everyone thinks I got what I deserved, that I threw away a good man because I was selfish and cruel and couldn't appreciate what I had. Maybe they're right. Maybe Jordan was exactly the husband I needed and I was too broken to see it. Maybe if I hadn't been so angry at him for trying to help, we could have gotten through Dad's death together and come out stronger. But I can't shake the feeling that we were wrong for each other from the beginning. That Jordan needed someone who would appreciate his gentle stability, and I needed someone who would match my intensity instead of trying to calm it down. Maybe the awful things I said that night were just the truth, finally coming out in the cruelest possible way. I'm not proud of what I did. I'm not proud of how I handled my grief or my marriage or any of it. But I'm tired of pretending I'm some monster who destroyed a perfect relationship for no reason. Jordan and I were incompatible in ways that became impossible to ignore when real life got messy. I just wish I'd figured that out before I said things that can never be taken back, before I hurt him in ways that made it impossible for him to ever look at me the same way again. The worst part isn't even losing Jordan, though that hurts more than I expected. It's knowing that everyone who watches our story unfold sees me as the villain who threw away true love because I was too selfish to appreciate it. They don't see the months of feeling suffocated by someone else's idea of what I needed. They don't see how lonely it was being married to someone who treated me like a problem to be solved instead of a person to be desired. I'm 32 now, divorced, living alone for the first time in my adult life. My dad is dead, my marriage is over, and most of our friends won't return my calls. According to everyone else's version of this story, this is exactly what I deserve for being so cruel to a man who only ever tried to love me. And maybe they're right. Maybe this is karma for saying unforgivable things to someone who didn't deserve them. But late at night, when I'm alone in this apartment that smells like the previous tenant's cigarettes, I can't help but think that Jordan and I were always going to end up here eventually. Maybe not this way, maybe not this brutally, but we were never going to make it long term. We wanted different things from love, from marriage, from each other. I just happened to be the one drunk enough to say it out loud in the most devastating way possible. So yeah, I sat on another man's lap drunk and mocked my husband in bed, and now he's divorcing me without a word. Everyone thinks I'm the villain, and maybe I am. But I'm also free from a marriage that was slowly suffocating both of us, even if Jordan was too decent to admit it. Sometimes the worst thing you can do ends up being the most honest thing you've ever said.